welcome back to my channel. So first of all, I want to apologize if you can hear some weird background noise. I have the washer running and the AC is on, and it's just all making a lot of noise around me, and there's nothing really I can do about that. Hopefully it's not too annoying. But I am currently prepping for a business trip next week, and I'm also having some pre-birthday celebrations this weekend since I will be on my business trip actually on my birthday, and I'm just a little late recording and editing this. But here we are. So I am still not ready to share a lot on my build just yet. I'm still in progress with some itty-bitty little details on the panels, but so for now, I wanted to talk about something that seems to be resurging once again within the cosplay community online, and I wanted to talk about cheating in cosplay contests. But before we hop into that, as always, hit the like button if you like this video, hit subscribe for more content from me. So let's talk about cheating in cosplay contests. I know that there's been some high-profile incidents in the past couple of years. One regarding a contestant at New York City Comic-Con who wound up cheating in multiple contests and completely destroying their reputation online and disappearing from the community when they were found out. And then another very high-profile influencer cheating in a local to them contest. But I'm not going to name any names in this. I'm not going to go over any actual drama. I just want to lay out, how does one even cheat in a cosplay contest? What does that look like? How do judges look for potential signs of a dishonest contestant? And I just want to lay out what we have collectively as a community agreed on that qualifies as cheating. Now, of course, this can vary from contest to contest because rules are not the same across the board, so keep that in mind as we talk through this. First of all, how does one cheat in a cosplay contest? There's really two main ways to do this. One is purchasing a pre-made costume, something from like Amazon or Pro Cosplay, Mike Costumes or Mick Costumes, whatever they're called, something like that. You go online and you just purchase some mass manufactured costume, or you commission a custom costume for yourself. Go to a seamstress or a cosplayer who does commissions and they build something custom for you. It'll fit you perfectly, it'll be unique to you, that is your costume. Both of those are the same when it comes to a craftsmanship contest. Craftsmanship contests require that you have made usually around 70% of your costume, sometimes as low as 50% depending on the competition, sometimes as high as 90% depending on whether you're novice, journeyman, or master level. So there's a lot of variance between contest and contest. I highly recommend that you look at the rules very, very carefully for whichever contest you plan to enter. And if you have any questions, reach out to the cosplay contest coordinator. They should be able to answer them for you. A particular way of cheating is where a competitor takes these costumes that they did not make themselves and dishonestly enter them into a craftsmanship contest. By doing so, they are claiming that they have made at least a certain percentage that was laid out in the contest rules. So they're entering something that they did not make themselves into a cosplay contest. That is cheating in a craftsmanship contest, because the whole point of the contest is not how much you look like the character or how well you walk the stage. The whole point of that contest is how well did you make the costume. Now, not to confuse this with someone using a model. So say if I don't wish to wear a costume on stage, but I want to make one, then I can enter in most contests a costume as myself with a model who will walk it on the runway for me. This is usually laid out in your application or coordinated with the contest itself so they understand that you are not the one walking the stage. You as the creator have to be there during pre-judging to explain how it was made, walk the judges through your build, and typically have to be there for the stage walk to accept any sort of award that that costume may build. That's perfectly fine. A lot of people do that. No issues with that whatsoever. So I hope all of that makes sense. So that is one of the biggest ways that contestants cheat in a cosplay contest. Now, a well-seasoned and experienced judge should be able to pinpoint these people in the contest. So one of the things we're looking for is the type of material. Oftentimes things that are mass-produced are made out of this really cheap, flimsy material that's screen printed with some sort of design. Most people do not have the capability to do that sort of screen printing at home, so that's usually a red flag that we can look for. We can also look for the seams. There's a specific type of overlocker stitch that is often used within machine manufactured costumes, we look for that type of finishing, and that it can also be a red flag. We will also look for markers, any sort of company stamp, a tag, anything like that that we can see that clearly screams that this was factory made and not made by the cosplayer. Another thing that we look for is in something that was maybe commissioned. So it will look handmade. It will have the same type of imperfections that a handmade garment will have. That one is a bit more difficult to spot, but we typically are able to find out based on the questions that we ask. If the cosplayer wearing the costume, the cosplayer that entered the costume, cannot answer some basic questions about how the costume was made, or they answered them incorrectly, such as whatever information they give just couldn't have happened to create whatever we're asking about, stuff like that, we should be able to determine whether or not they actually made that costume themselves. Now, another way that we can determine this is through a build book. A build book is just a document that contains photos and descriptions of what the contestant did to create that costume. It gives more background information on the costume being made and is referenced in deliberations so that we can pick the right people for the awards. A build book is required in most craftsmanship contests because it is another way to prove that you did make the costume. So in the build books, we will see things like deconstructed in the process of being made. We'll get to see the inner workings of things as they're being put together. However, these are not foolproof. As one of those high-profile stories shown, they stole someone's photos from Instagram and put them in a build book and claimed them as their own. That is more difficult to determine whether or not someone's build book is legitimate, which is one of the reasons why I highly recommend using photos of you making the costume. So if you're zooming in on a detail that you made, maybe zoom out and show yourself. I'm really bad at doing this myself, and I'm trying to get better at it, which is why a lot of my shorts are starting to show me actually working on the costume versus just what's being done to the costume. But that's one way to help legitimize the build book. But really what we're looking for is during prejudging the questions that we're asking and the telltale signs of something that may have been factory made. But unfortunately, judges are not infallible and things do slip by, and there have been some cases of people who have not made their costume winning awards, and it's unfortunate that people will do this. It's not fair to those who actually put the time, effort, and money into making their own costume, but that is one of the reasons why a skilled and experienced judge is so important in prejudging to help spot anything that may be suspicious. And then the other major way that people cheat, and this one bothers me quite a bit because it's incredibly unfair to the contestants, and something that within cosplay we call sandbagging, which I understand is a term that means something else outside of the cosplay realm, but within the context of a craftsmanship contest, sandbagging is where a person will take a costume that has already won an award and take it to another costume contest or multiple craftsmanship contests even, continue to compete in that costume without making any significant changes. So for example, if I enter a craftsmanship contest and I win Best Masters or even Best in Show, my costume is no longer eligible to compete in other craftsmanship contests. Now I have to point out here that sometimes rules specifically say that you can re-enter a costume, or some coordinators, if you ask them, may go ahead and let you, but it is a bad look to the community if a costume that won competes again, and it may affect your reputation online when people make that connection. So I don't recommend doing that, even if the contest allows it. It just gives people, I guess, the ick, as the kids would say. However, there are also some caveats here where this is okay. So say, for instance, I entered a very small local con, 1,000 people go to this con, very, very small, and I win Best in Show with my costume. I can take that costume to, say, like MegaCon Orlando, an incredibly large convention and the Masters of Cosplay circuit. I can take that same costume, which did win an award, and compete in a larger contest, and that's perfectly fine. You are at that point competing up. So you're going from a smaller realm of contestants. I hope this doesn't sound wrong, but essentially the thought is that at a smaller competition, you have less competition. Like there's typically maybe 30 people that enter the competition versus 150 at a different con. So you're competing against less people, and not necessarily less skilled people, but less people, and it's considered, you know, just like a smaller type of award is what it would be. It's Best in Show, yes, but it's at a smaller convention. Now you're taking that costume and you are going to a more difficult competition like Masters of Cosplay. So you're going from small and up to a bigger contest. And now you're going to be competing against more people, and oftentimes something like a circuit like Crown or Masters of Cosplay is going to have a higher level of competition as well, because they bring out the like masters of cosplay. So that is perfectly fine if you go from a small competition and win, and then you go to a bigger competition. Now, if you win at that bigger competition, you should retire the costume unless you make significant changes, which I'll get into in a moment. Typically, you should stop there unless there's a bigger contest. You could go afterwards. But where this becomes a problem and is considered sandbagging is if you enter into like the Masters of Cosplay or Crown, really big, high profile, difficult competitions, and then you win first place, or even second or third place can count as well, depending on the competition. And then you take that costume that won this massive award, and then you go to an itty bitty con in a small town and you compete there. It's unfair to the other contestants because you already have something that has been proven to be a super master level cosplay and it won its award. You don't want to take that to a smaller convention where maybe there's not as many people to compete against. It's considered sandbagging. But the one that really bothers me, like that sucks, right? It's a bad look either way, but the one that really bothers me, I've seen this happen a few times, is someone who wins at a smaller con, and then they go to another small con and win again, and they go to another small con and win again, and they just keep going to all the small cons they can with this costume that keeps winning awards. That one bothers me the most because smaller conventions are often where novices get their start. There's less pressure to compete in something with a smaller audience. You could have something as small as like a 15 or 20 person contest. It's less intimidating, and it's an excellent place for a novice to sort of like take the first step into competing, and to have someone that clearly has some sort of master level skill and going around and just sweeping the local circuit, it's just horrible, and I think it's just not a good thing to do. I also don't think it is good for someone who is a master level cosplayer that has been proven in larger conventions, or say are judges at larger conventions. I don't think it's fair for those people to then go compete in small cons. So for someone like me, I judged at some very large conventions. I've won some decent awards. I would never feel comfortable going back to my local con in St. Louis and competing. It just wouldn't seem fair. I'm not trying to say that like I'm better than anyone else, but I have more experience in both judging and competing at very large competitions at the master level. I wouldn't feel right if I then went and swept a small circuit. So that is all considered sandbagging in a way. I totally understand that you put your time and effort into something and it doesn't necessarily win the award that you want. My Sakizo build that I'm spending so much time and money and effort on, if I take it somewhere like the Crown circuit and maybe only get like a third place or whatever sort of thing, but I really think it could win a best in show somewhere, I'm going to really not like wearing it once, competing in it once, getting a smaller award, and then having to hang it up because I put so much work into it. I want to keep competing. Now there is a way that I can do this. So if I modify heavily parts of the costume, then it's considered a new costume and I can compete in it again. Typically the rule of thumb is 50%. You want to rework 50%, is you just keep tweaking it. You have to rework a large part of the costume to make it something new. We don't want to take the same costume and compete again and again and again. However, personally, I don't like the bad vibes, for lack of a better word, that I feel if I take something and compete more than once after it has won something. So for instance, my Cosmos, she won Best Masters at Tampa Bay, but I think I could make her a best in show piece. Of course, it all depends on who shows up. I could rework the wings. I think I would rework the skirt. I do love the corset and the cape and the shoes. Those would probably stay the same. Maybe I'd rework parts of the sleeves, but I think I could do that better to make it a more competitive piece in another contest. They won Best Masters in a fairly large competition, so I will not be doing that. Just personally, I just don't want to. So she's a display piece. I've gotten used out of her displaying her at my booth quite a bit. So at least I got to do that. And my Sakizo build, when I'm done with her, will also become a display piece. I don't think I'll be wanting to wear that casually to a convention. So those are the two ways that we have agreed as a community are ways that people cheat. And I really wanted to talk about, because again, I saw that this was starting to be stirred up in conversation on threads again, and I felt like it was a good time to just do a refresher as we wrap up the last of the convention season this summer. Like I said, I do really think there's some misconception about what is cheating. I wholeheartedly want to believe that the people who have done it, some of them have done it by honest mistake. They see costume contest and they think I can wear whatever I want. Maybe they didn't read the rules. So always read the rules. And if it says craftsmanship, know that you need to have made a large portion of the costume, just like as a rule of thumb. Now there are competitions where you can purchase your costume and wear them. Masquerades often allow that. Walk-ons like runway contests or hallway contests often allow for purchase costumes. So if you don't make costumes but you still want to be part of the contest circuits, just look for the ones that do allow purchase costumes and don't try to do a craftsmanship costume until you're ready to make your own. All I want to talk about today, I'm really anxious to talk more about my Sakizo build, but we're not there yet. Next week pretty much is completely eaten up by my business trip. So if there's any specific cosplay or costuming topics you want me to talk about next week, please let me know in the comments below, and I will make a video about whichever one seems to be the most popular next week. So with that, make sure to subscribe for more content from me and check out my videos on my Sakizo build, especially the short I posted last week showing all the details of the panels. And with that, I will see you in my next video. Bye!